Hello, everyone. Welcome, Shamaya Tantra family, all the Tantrikas and all the people practicing Tantra around the world that are friends of Heidi's. My name is Jolene Bobinski, and I've been spending a lot of time with Heidi over the last few months, assisting in classes and helping out, holding space, learning a lot more about Tantra through her. And we happen to be on a little cross BC tour in Kelowna, British Columbia today, and we're heading to Vancouver very shortly. And I realized we didn't have a video necessarily in Heidi's tool chest that explained a little more about her story or her origin story and how she came to Tantra and why she chose it. And but I've heard quite a few people asking these questions or what it means to her, and I thought, you know what, we should probably have a little bit of time to sit and ask and hear from her in her own words, so that many people can hear the story before they meet her. Because I think sometimes I know that a lot of classes or things I might sign up for, I'd like to know the instructor a little more. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Heidi. Come on, have a seat, my lady.
Well, hello.
We're going to play some music and do an Ellen little thing, but we don't have a DJ here.
Just imagine there's music and an audience.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Heidi, for letting me interview you and be a part of your videos.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Yeah. We've had some incredible talks while we're navigating the highways and just about many different life things, and how Tantra comes in and really helps give us perspective and deal with things in life.
And it's great actually having to practice my own teachings, as hard things come up and things are really tough. Jolene has been here keeping me accountable, reminding me of
or poking
things,
you and annoying you.
Poking me and annoying me, so that I have to use the very things that I learn and teach, which is actually an amazing thing.
Yeah, can we say I'm a super extrovert and
super introvert.
Yeah.
Yes. So learning a lot from each other.
So what I want to ask you, I'll ask a few questions, and if anybody has something else that comes up that you're thinking, please feel free to comment online, and maybe we'll ask.
And Scott's here. Hi, Scott.
Hey, Scott. So I know I've heard quite a few people ask questions over the last many months, but I have 4 that I thought I'd stick to and see if anyone has a few more. I wanted to know, I know that you should be a tax planner full time.
Yes.
And work for one of the big 4. We probably won't say who.
Sure.
Yeah.
It was a big accounting firm.
Yeah, it was a big accounting firm.
Yeah.
And she was working internationally.
I was working in the international tax department.
Yeah, yes.
So I was an international tax planner.
Yeah. And how did you discover Tantra?
That's a great question. Because it felt, it was one of those cases of being the strange child and wondering where these things came from, and then finally having like the pieces of a Rubik's Cube click into place.
What things came from?
So let me back up.
Okay. Because
when I was in university, I remember having this strange experience of taking a English 101 course. And they give us all of these really dry old English essays, like really kind of the old school proper English. And there were different poems, and we had to write essays on these poems. And every time I read one of these poems, even though it didn't have this in the poem, I saw that the poem was about using sexuality and alchemy, creating immortal elixirs through romance and love. And I would write my essays on these topics. And my professors were a little bit mystified, but they liked it because I think they'd read the same essay over and over and over, and suddenly there's this like poof of completely new energy, and I didn't know why. I didn't know why these things fascinated me. But it wasn't until my first time in India when I took my first Tantra course.
Oh.
And suddenly, all of these things that I thought were just me, all of these things that I thought were just my quirks, turned out to be a tradition. Turned out to be a body of practices.
Okay, then I would like to know, how did you, because that's incredible, but how did you hear about Tantra or decide to take that course?
Well, this is a bit of a personal story that I will share, because we're just in our living room, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I have always had very strong sexual energy in my life. And I went through this period, like my whole life before Tantra, where it was a plague. Like, I felt sometimes like I'd be walking down the street and I would just throw out sexual energy at someone. And I'd be like, oh, come back, I didn't mean to do that. And it was like this cloud around me. And it felt like the cloud was running me instead of me running the cloud.
Oh, yeah.
Have you ever felt that?
No.
No.
Maybe?
Good Tantrika.
No, absolutely, obviously.
Well, I had a real problem with this. And I was very keen on finding the answer.
Yeah.
And so I was on my soul searching trip in India, and I thought, this is the place.
Yeah.
And so I asked everyone that I met. You know, I would have a 10-minute conversation over breakfast and say, I've got this problem with my sexual energy. Like, I'm not in control of it. It's in control of me.
That's amazing that you had conversations in public.
I was a woman on a mission.
I mean, it's not common. It's not common that people would just bring that up, and that's really brave.
Thank you. Yeah, it felt like the place. I felt like this was the time. And I want to emphasize that, you know, even though my life was still under control, like nothing was out of control, but there was just this feeling of my energy doing what it wanted and not being the one to direct it. So oftentimes there would be nothing physically happening, but I could feel it. I felt like a leaky boat, and my sexual energy was just leaking out indiscriminately wherever it wanted. And sometimes it would get me into trouble because someone would feel that.
Yeah.
And it would be like I had hooked into them somehow. And then they would treat me in a different way.
Yeah.
They would expect different things from me.
Oh, yeah.
And so I felt like I was always on cleanup crew, you know, dealing with this.
Yeah, yeah.
So here I am.
Sending the wrong signals.
Sending the wrong signals.
Yeah.
Accidentally. It wasn't a good feeling.
Yeah.
So here I am asking restaurant owners, you know, fellow travelers, celibate monks, and no one had any advice.
Sexual energy. No longer celibate.
Right? I mean, I asked anyone who would listen until one day I was in this restaurant.
Yeah.
And I'd ordered too much bruschetta. So I offered to everyone in the restaurant, would you like to share this bruschetta with me? Okay. And this one girl said, yes, I would love to share your bruschetta. And her name was Julia. Oh. And so I sat down. Julia, if you see this, I love you. Thank you. I sat down and chatted with her.
Okay.
And I asked her, I told her the story about my leaky sexual energy, as I did everyone. And I said, so, you know, do you have any advice? Yeah. She said, well, actually, a friend of mine is teaching a Tantra course in Goa in 2 weeks.
Goa. Yeah, beautiful.
She said, let me give you his contact information. And I followed the threads, and 2 weeks later, I arrived in Goa at my very first Tantra workshop, where I had this feeling of recognition, of suddenly this mythology and the symbolism and everything that had felt very dear to my heart was very much at the surface for me. Suddenly had an origin, a source.
And so it may have changed, but even if you could explain right now what Tantra means to you. Then.
Yeah, this is a tough one because it actually has come to mean everything. I see everything through the lens of Tantra. And for me, it's cultivating such an intimate relationship with everything in your environment that you start to have almost a romantic relationship with your environment.
Yeah. Okay.
And so, for example, emotions.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if I'm feeling an emotion of anger, let's say,
Mm-hmm.
I know that I have a choice.
Yeah.
I can push that anger away and say, oh, I shouldn't feel angry.
Mm-hmm.
I can try to get rid of that anger.
Mm-hmm.
I can try to go for a workout and get rid of it.
Mm-hmm.
I can bypass and say, I'm going to find the good in this situation and I'm not going to be angry.
Mm-hmm.
Or I can invite that anger into my living room and I can give it the most comfortable chair that I have.
Mm-hmm.
And I can say, welcome, come here, be here. I accept you. I want to feel you and know what you're about.
And how does that relate to Tantra? Like, what would your definition of Tantra be in that? Like, how does Tantra allow you to do those things?
Mm-hmm. Well, it's the most integrative spiritual path that I know.
Okay.
So inherently, everything is welcomed. And it's a daily practice of cultivating an intimate relationship.
Mm-hmm.
So Tantra is about intimacy with the moment.
Mm.
And in my workshops, I talk about this trigger word that we have.
Mm.
And
which one?
The trigger word is worship.
Oh, yeah.
And there's a way to
mm-hmm.
be so incredibly intimate with an emotion, with a element of nature, with the divine.
Being reverent for something. Like watching and being in reverence to the divine within.
That's a beautiful quality.
Yeah.
And intimacy is something that requires engagement.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't be intimate with something you're not engaging with. Okay. And the highest form of intimacy is worship. Mm-hmm. It's where you're so intimate with something that you start to merge with that. It's where you're so in awe of something, where you're so appreciative and so open with that thing that there's a union that occurs. And so that is the peak. That is the goal of Tantra, is to start to walk through life in that state of worship. Mm-hmm. And this may be very triggering to hear. And I use the word very differently than it's come to be used in common language. But to me, worship is that highest form of intimacy, where you're seeing the divine in something and seeing yourself reflected as divine. Yeah. So worship is not you are higher than me. Mm-hmm. Worship is I see the divine in both of us, and those two are merging. And that is the ultimate goal of Tantra, is that every moment be an act of worship.
Beautiful. Can you speak to how Tantra is what the word relationship means, or being in relation to something in Tantra? Tantric.
Yeah, I want to say hi to Isa. Thanks for being here, Isa.
Oh, hello.
Relationship. Relationship is the linchpin of existence. Nothing exists without relationship.
So light and dark and cold and...
Sure. Yeah. Subject and object.
Yeah.
The only reason you feel anything or even exist is because there's both a subject and an object. So you are doing the activity and you are aware of that activity.
So Tantra is really not just like partners and sex. It's even, it could be your relationship with your partner, but also your relationship to yourself.
Yeah, your relationship with your breath.
With your
relationship with your skin. Relationship with your coffee. Yeah. Relationship with your big toe.
With your big toe, yeah.
It's so think of your life as a continual sequence of relationships. So every moment is another relationship. Right now we're having a relationship with you watching this. We're having a relationship with the temperature of the air on our skin. And that relationship might be one of annoyance. Maybe the temperature is hotter than I would like, or colder than I would like. Or it can be a relationship of acceptance.
Mm-hmm.
or it can be a relationship of titillation, feeling the temperature of the air on your skin and enjoying it. So each moment is a brand new relationship, and we are in charge of what kind of relationship we strike in every moment.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. Hmm. And so after you had taken a class in India, was it right then, or was it, what happened in order for you to choose Tantra as a path, as your whole life purpose?
Yeah.
To share this. How did you decide on the path for yourself?
It did happen quite fast.
Oh, okay.
In that, on that first trip to India, I took that Tantra course, and I decided to move to Asia. So I called my mom and I said, I'm moving to Asia.
Wow.
And I lived there for a couple of years.
Right.
And went to different schools, spent time in different monasteries. I was also studying Buddhism at the time, which is very related. Some sects of Buddhism are very tantric.
Oh.
And so I was staying in monasteries, staying in tantra communities. At the time, I was leading a dual life, actually, because I was still doing accounting online.
Oh, online, yes, right.
Yeah. So there was a while where I really had to cultivate my masculine and feminine, because I would be doing accounting, very, very left brain analytical work. And I would be at a Tantra festival. So I would have to switch instantly from this very focused, very linear way of thinking. Wow. I would literally open the door and there would be this sea of syrupy, sweet, dancing people, opening their arms and just flowing through the day. Wow. And so I had to find ways to switch very fast between my masculine and feminine side.
Yeah. Wow, that's fabulous. I can see, some challenges with switching, but also some interesting balance to find between the two.
And interesting to have that switch, because moments in our life call for either our masculine or our feminine side. And it can be difficult. It's very easy to get stuck in one and have that be my mode of operating. But to be able to switch gears on a dime is not a natural thing. That's kind of a skill that we need to cultivate.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's fantastic. When you were studying Buddhism and Tantra, and but you've made this your life work now, and this is what you do full time. How did you decide? I mean, I'm sure you still follow many Buddhist practices and everything, but how did you decide that Tantra was the path for you?
I have this thing where I like to choose things that challenge me. And spending time in yoga communities, I started doing yoga very young, like far before this, actually.
Oh, okay.
And the tantric path to me was more challenging because it doesn't say there's one path.
Yeah.
It's about integrating the paths for me. And so to me, that seemed like the highest actualization available to me. To say, I'm not going to pursue just monetary material gains in my accounting career. And I'm not going to just become a yogi meditating in the mountains either and renouncing the world.
Right.
Tantra calls for us to unite both of those. Yeah. And so it's like learning how to fire on all cylinders, engaging all parts of yourself. And to me, there was an excitement in that. Like, I wanted that. I didn't want to just be half of me. I wanted to be all of me.
Yeah. Wow. Love it. I can see why. I really enjoy that. It's part of why I love Tantra as well. All is welcome. We've spoken in one of my favorite books is Conversation with God by Neil Donald Walsh. Yeah. And it blew me away the first time. I really hated it. I didn't read it full through the first time in my early 20s. I was so angry with it because I had a certain very dualistic idea of everything, right?
Truth
and wrong,
and non-truth.
Yeah, God.
Yeah.
And what God was not. Of course, he wasn't bad things. But what deems something bad? And the looking at the gifts in the light and the dark and all of that was really magical. And why once I started learning more and more about Tantra, and especially some of the classically inspired teachings,
Mm-hmm.
helped me realize, wow, this is so inclusive and so much of what I've felt since I was a little girl as well.
Beautiful.
I wanted to know also when you decided to teach or share what you've been learning, because I was fascinating. I met Heidi through our good friend Annalie 6 years ago, I think. Five years
At
ago.
least.
5 or 6 years ago.
6.
And we were both working corporate jobs.
Mm-hmm.
And I was fascinated by this woman who had been in India for India and Asia, different parts, for years, working abroad. And I thought, how do you do this? This sounds more like much more natural to me, kind of being a bit more nomadic, which is quite interesting at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I wanted to know how you came to share it. And she had just come back and was telling me a lot about her stories, and I thought, how do you like go and kind of plant all these seeds, or have them planted, let them grow, and then seem to kind of harvest and share the harvest with everyone. Metaphor for you.
Yeah. Well, it was really actually our dear friend Annalie that sort of ignited that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, she was kind of the impetus that me to get out there and teach.
Wow.
And so it started very small. And we did do workshops together for about a year, I think.
Yeah. But why did you agree to it? Because that was your choice. Like, how did you make that choice? Do you remember?
I remember, it's funny because I remember sitting on the couch with her one day, and having, it was late at night, and I just had this feeling wash over me that we were going to do something together that was very meaningful. And this was a while before, and I didn't know what it was. And so when that moment came, it felt like an invitation that was in my heart to accept. And it was scary, but it was there, and it was so just total in its invitation. It was clear.
Yeah,
it wasn't really something that I could have walked away from or not done.
Well, I'm glad you chose this path and to share. Yeah. Those are all the questions I have for today. And I want to thank you very much for spending this time. I don't know how long we've taken. Actually, 22 minutes so far. So I think this is a good time to say goodbye. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being on this Tantra tour with me in BC and Kelowna and Vancouver.
And tomorrow we're doing a Tantra 101 here in Kelowna.
Yes, we are.
Yeah, and that's at Tantrika Yoga. And then on Tuesday, we will be doing a tantric speed dating in Vancouver, which is super exciting. That'll be lots of fun. We have lots of friends signed up and coming out, and
can't wait to be back in Vancouver.
Yeah, such a fun night. And then next Saturday, I think that's the 28th.
28th,
is the 101 in Vancouver. So that's a really wonderful day to spend just absorbing and listening, and then practicing a little bit with each other, just noticings and visualizations and embodiments of a lot of the theories. It's wonderful.
Yes.
Hope to see you there.
Yeah, and I will be back in Edmonton October 6th for a Tantra 101, and then in Toronto on November 10th. So wherever you are, hopefully you're within a quick drive to come and drop into one of those. I'd love to see you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Jolene.
Thank you.
Night, everyone.
Night.